So let's carry forward this beautiful day ahead. Now, once again, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Steve LaValle, co-CEO and co-founder WonderBotz LLC, and I have already introduced our dashing personality before. So this topic is about empowering business users amidst and the need for growing technological complexity, navigating digital transformation with confidence. So, sir, can we have you again on stage? Mr. Steve Chairperson for today's conference and is a co-CEO at WonderBotz, a leading intelligent robotic process automation boutique service provider.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be back. It's been a while. We're going to talk about intelligent automation today, what's happening in that, and what organizations need to be mindful of as they continue to expand their businesses. So the analysts have been saying for a long time that intelligent automation is a rapid growth category. Late last year, I'm using a study from last year, although I don't think the numbers are, I think they're understated now compared to the recent changes that we've seen in the marketplace. But last year, Gartner reported that about 30% of the firms had implemented intelligent automation and were growing, and they were expecting it to increase to 50% or a 66% growth rate in the not too distant future. So again, the classic reasons why is the operational cost reduction is still something that we're seeing in the marketplace. They predicted about a 30% improvement when you take intelligent automation with process improvement. Of course, that's really awesome because we know as business people, when we reduce expense, most of that falls to the bottom line as profit or can be redirected for other investments. They also talked about how the scale of the programs are increasing in organizations, and they're saying that most of the larger enterprises will have 70 or so concurrent IA initiatives ongoing, which is pretty remarkable as you consider that most of these initiatives, if you're familiar with the space, are relatively quick to implement, so that if you're always running a lot of relatively quick, you can imagine how quickly that scale will go. And then, of course, the last prediction here, which is what I'm going to end up focusing a lot on, is about half of the enterprises over the next couple of years are going to figure out how to get AI working into their organizations. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the tricks of the trade there. If I get this right. But again, so where are we getting started? So when we talk about AI, most of the time when we talk about AI, up to I would say maybe January of this year, we were talking about AI used for making predictions, for evaluating patterns, looking for exceptions. Again, it was reported about a third of IT and about a third of business had kind of adopted it into their operations in one form or another. And you can see sort of the classic cases of IT security threat identification, like, hey, like where's this coming? Like this shouldn't be happening here. We create a flag, we notify, we take some action on it. Fraud detection from AML, for example, anti-money laundering for those who know from the banking industry, or other ways. Again, very familiar, and I sort of put this into the category of classic AI. And most of the people in the room understand, at least in my definition today, I kind of like it's really AI supporting decision making for the company, not necessarily integrated into the line or operational activities of the firm. So I want to give a little bit of context around the technologies and how these technologies are being pulled into businesses. So it's our view and our experience that it's the use case that pulls the technology into the business. So the use case is the practical application of the technologies or set of technologies to solve a business problem. So for example, I receive an invoice, I got to read the invoice, I got to take the information from the invoice, I got to put it into the payable systems, I have to code it, I got to tell the bank to pay it, I got to notify Treasury. These are all sort of end-to-end activities that require many applications in order to, or many types of platforms and functionality in order to perform the end-to-end. And companies, as they are exhausting the pool, are pulling in more technologies in order to expand the number of use cases that are viable. So, in the history of here where we started with RPA, maybe 10 years ago. RPA, if you don't know, is technology that uses other technology the same way that a human does or can be coded to operate like a computer. So we started with that, and we started processing and moving routine tasks to these, we call them robots, they're not really robots, okay? And then we quickly realized that, hey, if we could read, those robots required structured information. Okay, so if we could read documents and extract information from it, we could structure that information, and now we can do so many more use cases than we could do when we were relying upon just the information that was there. And then we realized, hey, if we could just somehow involve the people in that, from a chat perspective, we could do even more use cases from that. And then the whole set of applications, like Blue Prism is here, UiPath, Blue Prism, Automation Anywhere. These are all sort of the classic tools, and they built out their ecosystems, and people started using them to get this initial round of value to achieve these use cases. And then while that was happening, these tools were of course, getting better and better and better with more functionality to let you incrementally move, but fundamentally it was from this value prop here around these things. So then we got really smart and we decided, hey, now we just don't want to move information around. We need to store information. We have to have applications. So now we have the no-code, low-code start to come in popular. It's like, oh, I can build an application on the fly and I can use it to solve some problem in my company. Again, very popular. A lot of companies do it. But I want to point out, this is not an or. These are ands. So we're building on what we have, and now we're adding more to it, okay? Then, of course, we got so good, now we need process mining because we've got to figure out what we want to go automate or what we want to improve. So then you have the likes of a Solanas or Abby Timeline or Fortress IQ, Blue Prism, BPI, if you know that tool, if I'm getting it right. These are tools that are designed to help business leaders figure out what to automate and where to focus their energies on. And then, of course, we still have the AI for decisions that I was talking about earlier. Again, once we got the initial rush from this, we could start moving to the edges, and we could increase the number of use cases of what you saw there. So now we're, so again, this has been going on for a while too, but now we've got this whole new thing that is suddenly kind of exploded on the scene. I know everyone here has been playing with ChatGPT on their computers and other types of tools where you can engage and you can generate text, you can generate images. It was a year ago for me that I was at a conference and somebody was demoing the ability to create an image. So it would be like, I need a duck swimming in a pool of lava. Well, guess what? You had a duck swimming in a pool of lava represented as an image. So now you can pretty much create whatever you want, or video as well. Now, of course, these are basic tools right now, but just as these tools started and then got better, these tools are starting and they're going to get better too. If you think about software generation, which is another thing that they can do. So Amazon Web Services, they have a lab where you can go in and describe a video game. And then that tool will generate the video game, and then you can play the video game. Now, it's not going to put Activision out of business or Nintendo out of business anytime soon, but this is where we are in this, that we're able to generate this code in order to very rapidly drive new software, new technologies, and new functionality in that case. Also, these generative AIs can do this content validation. So I think that what I want to pause here for a minute to say, there's a difference between the semantic use of our language and the pragmatic use of our language. So semantics are like literally what we said, and the pragmatic is what we mean. So we all know sarcasm is different than what we actually said, or there's a great example, your dog is in my yard. Okay, so what am I saying? Am I saying your dog's in my yard? Okay, this is a statement of fact. Or am I complaining, hey, your dog is in my yard? So which anyone would know means, oh, I got to get Fido and put it back on the chain or something like that. These tools right now can't deal with the pragmatic use of language. It's all very semantic. It's very literal. It's kind of like your socially awkward friend who's very literal on what it's doing. You ask a question, you get the answer that you ask for. Now the challenge is you got to be really careful now on the question that you ask, because as we are generating, we're also teaching these models how to talk to us in a very compelling way. So like they are picking up pragmatic interpretations of how they're presenting the results. So you have to know that, like, what did I get? And the computers, these tools, they don't have any intent. So you can't read into it. You have to be able to critically look at what they have. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. But in that context here, I want to talk about sort of content validation. So if AI can generate the content, now we need to have a way to figure out, is the content accurate? Is it truthful? Okay? So now we're going to teach other AIs how to figure out whether the information that's been communicated with great energy and enthusiasm is in fact accurate. How do we do fraud detection? Okay? Now the problem is, as soon as we teach the models how to do fraud detection and communicate with passion, hey guys, we're also teaching it how to trick us. Because if it knows what a fraud looks like, someone could, in fact, give me the best possible way to communicate this message out here, and then these things will produce it for you. So this is the big caution around this generative AI. Now I want to pause before I go. So here's the thing that gave me the most heartache when it was pointed out to me. I said, like, the revolution has begun. So up until now, if you needed a computer or you needed a program, you needed something, we had to learn how to talk to the computer. We had to learn how to code. We had to learn how to use Excel. We had to learn how to use SAP. We had to learn all these things. These were skills and techniques that had to be done in order to get these machines to produce the outputs that we want. Okay? But hey, guess what, guys? Like, we don't need to do that anymore. We can talk to the... So listen, we needed to learn how to speak the language of computer. Hey, guess what? The computers have learned how to speak to us in our language. Okay? That's terrifying thought if you think about that, because now anybody can use these tools. And we have to make sure that they're using it the way, using it for good. Good actors, not bad actors. So again, these are some realities that we have to think about, whether it's intentional or unintentional. We could easily empower people to do things. And as I said, like, this is a revolution. This is perhaps the single biggest thing, in my opinion, that has changed over the past 10 years in this space. And we don't know what's going to happen. I hope it's good. If we're smart and we govern it, it can be good. But it could go off the rails a little bit. So which brings me to the next part. So is AI a guru or a con man? So I want to give you two examples. So there's a business improvement and the bogus citations. This is a famous case. You guys probably know it. I'll hit on it a little bit. So on the business improvement, this is actually a WonderBotz product, if you'll forgive me to talk about it. But what we have is a way to advise leaders on how to and where to focus their energies. So what this does is it tracks what people are doing. It gathers the facts of how they're using their computers and whatever tools they're using. And AI models take those facts in, and they formulate tasks, and they formulate processes, and they describe them using the models based upon the facts that it collects. Okay? We then prompt this tool with, okay, so this is what an automation opportunity looks like. Are there any in here? This is what a process improvement opportunity looks like. Are there any in here? Or hey, Vivek is a great performer, but Steve is not. So what is Vivek doing that Steve isn't in the execution of his tasks, so that I, as a manager, can go coach Steve to pick up the skills that Vivek has. So these are all fact-based observations supported and crafted by AI, presented to leaders who, in the business, who presumably know their business and could look at it and interpret the results and say, that looks right, or no, like I need to see a little bit more on that one because I'm not quite sure. Now, I want to, so that's case one. I'm going to come back to it in a minute. Okay, case two is the quote-unquote 6 bogus citations, the famous case in America. The basic premise is that an attorney, in preparing a brief for the courts, used ChatGPT to generate the citations for his brief and ended up generating a bunch of false citations that were included in the brief. And he didn't figure it out, but the judge figured it out. So he was in a lot of trouble once the judge figured it out. Now, in this case, again, a little bit of the history. So on the data here, we weren't using a contained data set that was originated. This data set was from the internet. So it could have been blogs. It could have even been pulling it from fiction. Books, what are cases? It could have been anything that it was pulling from. But this attorney, I should add a little bit more background, this particular attorney, because I read about this. So he normally practices in state courts, and he was preparing a brief for a federal court. So he wasn't as versed in the federal protocols, but he had to prepare this brief anyway. So he now went and he, let's assume he meant nothing, no ill intent. I don't know him, I don't know anything about it, but like, don't let this happen to you. This is a cautionary story. So he went to ChatGPT, and which pulled from the internet, and he asked for support for these cases. Now, we don't know. Maybe he said, generate the best case reference for this thing. He could have used the wrong words. And hey, guess what? The semantics, not the pragmatics. As a person, we would have known, okay, it's a court case, we're not going to make it up. But the computer, in its semantic interpretation, is going to say, okay, got to go generate the best case that I can do. And we did it like 6 times, I guess, right? And it produced these findings for him. And he didn't check them. So because he wasn't a federal attorney, he didn't know. I mean, because if this was an area that he normally practiced in, and suddenly 6 cases appeared that he hadn't heard of before, he probably would have scratched his head and said, well, how come I didn't know about these things? But he didn't have that expertise, and he, for whatever reason, there was a lame excuse in the documentation, but for whatever reason, he didn't go and check other reference sources to validate that these findings were in fact legitimate findings. Okay, so, and he got into a lot of trouble. Now, thank goodness the judge or the judge's clerk, somebody on the judge's team, realized that this was false. Okay, so just to kind of point out here how we kind of got into trouble here, right? So on the left side here, in the case of this tool, we had a very defined data set that we knew the origin and the traceability of that data set, and we knew that it was accurate, and we knew that it was applicable. Here, he didn't have that. He did not control what the sources of data that ChatGPT were using, okay? And, all right, that was point 1. Point 2, we have very well-crafted prompts to get the answers that we want to get from that data set for the objectives that we had. Here, we don't know what he did. He could have, create, generate, find. They all sound the same, but they mean different things. So these prompts here, now he got the cases, okay? Here, we deliver the results to leaders who know the business and can say, no, that doesn't make sense, right? But here, he got the results, he didn't know, and he didn't check, okay? So now you have, similar processes in a way. If you looked at what he did, if he had described his approach to you, any one of us might have said, okay, that makes sense, okay? But it produced a disastrous result for him and his career and the reputation of his firm. And here he was in California, here we're talking about him in India, right? So like this gives you the kind of how these things can move. This is like a global point coming out here. So I want to leave you this. I said, what do we do? Okay, so when you're looking at the adoption of these technologies, let's say adding on to the base that you have, okay, the first part I want to highlight here is that AI, this generative AI, is part of, it needs to be part of your intelligent automation strategy. It's an and, okay? We don't want to be, well, you could use it in automation, in isolation, to answer specific questions, but you'll get more value if we integrate it as part of an end-to-end process and pull that in, okay? The second part is to authenticate and curate and protect the data set that you're using. You know, don't use the internet if you have company information. I mean, all these people now are loading information into ChatGPT to get answers and summaries. Some of this information has got to be company confidential information that's going out into the internet in these open models. Okay, this is just like it's just waiting. Like, when is the big breach going to be announced because somebody accidentally put customer information or something else out into these models and they lost control of it? So like this is just inviting a problem right now. So you must secure the data, curate the data. We're working with the courts here in India around helping resolve civil cases, and we're kind of gathering the cases and the precedents, the acts and the precedents around that, and we're summarizing them. We're having attorneys and judges summarize what the things mean, and then that's the data set that you query when you're asking the question for this, call this a justice spot. But we know, because otherwise you could have no, you could see you end up with the bogus citations. Okay, audit trails are really important here. We're going to have to show the lineage of the data in the data sets. So sorry, I know some of us love data governance, some of us hate data governance, but hey, it's back again. We got to have data governance, particularly around this. Okay, now crafting your prompts. So we know the prompt is the question that you ask to the AI. I think prompt is the new skill that we all have to learn, and we have to learn to use them wisely. Because just as in a court, if I pick up my court example, if you ask a leading question, you might get an answer that you didn't mean to get. So we got to have a way we got to all learn these skills. And I think it's probably part art, part science. This is a whole thing that we're going to start to see emerge in the market right now around how do we craft the right types of prompts. And the prompts themselves, I would predict, will ultimately be part of the intellectual property of the firm and the organizations for how they address particular problems. Someone said, maybe each one of these prompt sets or model sets should have its own name. Like, hey, that's Bob. You know, let's have Bob give us the answer, so that we can recognize that different models may be organized in a different way, even if they're using the same data sets that we've curated. Okay, and the last part is you have to verify. You know, we trust, but we verify. You know, verify, verify, verify. Okay, so because it's going to look real when it comes back, and it's going to look compelling because we're teaching these models how to talk to us and persuade us. That's the whole point of what we're doing right now. So, you know, think about it now as just like treat the AI answer as if it was someone you just met. Okay, so, okay. Do I think they know what they're talking about? I don't know. So let me kind of listen critically, let me review critically, let me kind of understand what's happening, and let me go ask other people. And by the way, unfortunately, because it could vary from time to time, I mean, once you know Bob is okay, you might be able to trust Bob, assuming that no one has messed up the prompts for Bob. But you're going to have to treat the next model with the same level of skepticism in order to prevent yourself from being fooled. Okay. Now, here's the worst part about this. So, well, I don't worst that. It's the part is these models are going to get so good that we're going to need another set of models to check the models. So we're going to have to figure out how to create inspector bots, I don't know what we're going to call them, but something that's going to look at the results and say, does this look real? Maybe it's going to go interrogate third-party data sets, do things match for what we see? There was a great joke I read online, was as soon as the computers realized that people only have 5 fingers, we're all in a lot of trouble, and that's kind of from the point that if you look at a lot of the pictures that show up in the media, the ones that are fake, sometimes the people have 6 fingers, or there's an extra hand floating around them, or something like that, because they're not really set up yet, and nobody's really checking against this. But the AI, and it's going to happen so fast that we're going to need AI to check AI. And so there's going to be, I would predict, a whole other category of AI models that are the audit bots. I don't know, whatever they're going to end up being called. But this is it. So it summarizes, think big, get your data, make sure it's accurate, protect it, craft your prompts, and don't assume it's right. You have to verify. So I think that is it for me. So thank you again. It's my pleasure to have spoken with you.